Hi, my name is Grahm Nesbitt and I do music and sound design for games. You may be familiar with some of my work in a game called Garden Story, or some of the other things that I've been involved with. I want to talk a bit about melodies and how to repurpose them for different contexts. One technique that can help you accomplish this is something called reharmonization. Reharmonization can be thought of simply as when you have a piece of music and you take the melody from it and accompany it with different chords. Let's take a look at some examples of how I use this technique in Garden Story. In the game, there are two different versions of the music that play in each town. There's a version that plays during the daytime, and a version that plays in the evenings. The example we're going to be taking a look at for this is for an area called Autumn Town. I've gone ahead and labeled the chord changes that happen underneath the melody, and for demonstration purposes we're going to be using some basic MIDI sounds so we can really pay attention to what happens in the arrangement. So now let's take a look at the daytime version of the Autumn Town theme. Now that we've heard that version, let's take a look at the version that plays in the evenings. And now I'm going to play the versions that actually appear in the game back to back so you can really hear the contrast between the two. With these two very different chord progressions, my intention was to make the daytime version feel peaceful and laid back, while giving the nighttime version more of a sense of melancholy. Now we're going to be taking a look at another example, but this time it's for a melody that plays in two completely different parts of the game. This first one is an excerpt of the music that plays on the title screen. Later on during development, we needed a theme that played during some of the more emotional story beats, so I took this melody, slowed it down a little bit, and put different chords underneath it, and here's what that ended up sounding like. Now we're going to do the same thing that we did before, where I play the final versions of these tracks back to back so we can hear the contrast. So I hope you can see now how useful of a technique that reharmonization can be while composing. The next concept that I want to touch upon is something that's often referred to as parallel key modulation. Parallel keys are keys that share the same root, but one is the major version of that key and the other is the minor. An example of this kind of modulation would be starting with something that's in D major and changing the notes so that now it's in D minor. I wanted to talk a little bit about how I incorporated this concept in the soundtrack I created for the game Floppy Nights. There's a theme that plays very early on in the game to underscore some of the lighter narrative moments. Later on, when things become a little bit more serious, this theme comes back in the minor version. Just like the example I showed, this melody changes from D major to D minor. Let's take a listen to the first one. And again, we're just using some basic MIDI sounds for these examples. And here's the melody that plays later on towards the end of the game. For most composers, this might seem like a very simple and straightforward technique, and it is, but it can be really effective when used right. Let's listen to the two final versions of these melodies back to back. I hope that you've gained some useful information from this and that you can apply some of these techniques to your own composing process. I find that it's really helpful when creating a lot of music for a game to try to see the different ways that you can expand your musical ideas. That's about it for me. Happy music making!
Yeah!